I promised that what we would do for the rest of this lesson is take a look at something that we haven't looked at yet another idea or element of Earl's style that was completely innovative. No one had played three-finger style accompaniment to fiddle before Earl came along. And then, as time allows, we're going to look at a solo from the 60s that's very straightforward. I've been hearing from a lot of the more beginning and intermediate students that they want some material that they can grab onto. So we're going to look at Across the Blue Ridge Mountains from the Live at Vanderbilt recording, sometimes known as Across the Blue Ridge Mountains. I've been doing a lot of transcribing for this class, and I would advise you to go back after class is over and download the latest versions of both Gray Eagle and Fiddle and Banjo, because I did change them a little bit, just adding some section numbers and changing some tab mistakes. And if you find something in the tab that looks wrong that I should be taking a look at as well, be sure to let me know, because I also rely on you folks to help me get these tablatures correct. I want to look at Gray Eagle first. One of the great advantages of having YouTube and having live recordings and videos available is we don't have to look at just the recordings. And as Charlie Cushman talked about, Flatt and Scruggs, and especially Earl, were much more comfortable a lot of times in these radio performances. And so as we analyze Earl's fiddle tune style, I chose two performances. Gray Eagle from a WSM radio performance in early 1953 with Benny Martin, great fiddler, and then perhaps the most beautiful fiddle and banjo duet that Flatt and Scruggs ever recorded from live at Carnegie Hall with fiddler Paul Warren, a tune that they called Fiddle and Banjo, which is known by most other folks as Stony Point. So the links to the listening for all of these songs are on the assignment page for our course, so make sure that you listen to those. As we look at Gray Eagle, you will hear many different versions of this song. I checked out a Mark O'Connor version, Texas-style fiddling, and the tune was very, very different. Different numbers of sections, so forth and so on. And what I'm hearing in this performance with Scruggs and Benny Martin is what they're considering to be a three-part tune, and I've labeled the sections as A, B, and C. That's the latest thing I did in the tab that you can check out. And Earl tends to glide over some of the chord changes that more modern players will play for this tune. And then he and Benny add a move to a major 2 chord. If I played in G, that would be an A major, to a 5, which is not in a lot of different versions. This just goes to show that fiddlers will have regional variations of pieces, and we have to go with the way that they're playing the tune. And as you're listening to the tune, what I'm hearing is 3 sections. Each of them are 8 measures long, and they go through the tune a first time playing A, B, B, C, C, each section being 8 measures long. And then perhaps because of time constraints, or they just were shortening it up to move on to the next thing, the second time around, just 1 A section, 1 B section, but 2 C sections, and then the ending. The tab that I'm offering up is not a complete tab. It's missing just a couple, it's missing the 1 A section. Otherwise, it is a complete performance from beginning to end. I think that if we take a look at and listen to what Earl is doing in Gray Eagle, we do have the constituent elements of his approach to backup, which is just like so many of his other contributions, amazing. And the elements that we're going to think about are his down the neck rolling style backup, which is always a great way to start accompanying a fiddle. And by the way, the reasons we even talk about this is what banjo players do today too. From Earl, when we're accompanying a fiddle, we do these same approaches. So rolling back up down the neck, oftentimes highlighted with a lot of 4th string slides. Then to break up the texture, create something different, vamping techniques of a variety of complexity, which if we have enough time, we will get into that today. And if we don't explore all of it, we will talk about it next time. And then almost always in these fiddle and banjo duet performances, Earl will choose some moment of the tune to go up the neck and play an accompaniment based out of what I call a Sally Gooden position. Now, if you try to play along with the Earl Scruggs and Benny Martin recording on YouTube, you'll discover that they're in B flat. I'm going to do all my playing today in G. And let me go ahead, just so that you have this as a reference, play the tab slowly from beginning to end, since we don't have an abundance of time here. And then I will hit some highlights and be sure to ask some questions as well. In this performance, the fiddle starts first. So Earl is coming in once Benny has established a rhythm. So as you look at the tab, the first 3 beats of the first measure are rest. Earl picks up a pinch on that 4th beat and then continues to go. I'm going to play it straight through without repeats, just all the way through, just to, again, save a little bit of time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Next line. Second ending to the vamp. Page 2. And then it goes back to the first page. The ending is shave and a haircut. Made a couple of little mental errors here, but got most of it on some easy stuff there at the bottom of page 1. But hopefully that'll help you find your way through it. Don't forget, as you're listening to a YouTube performance, you can slow that speed down to any tempo that you want. The presets are 75, 50, and 25%. I think that for most of us, what is the most fascinating and perhaps difficult to achieve aspect of this fiddle tune accompaniment that also carries over to how we would use these techniques in other songs is vamping. So let me do a little bit of a quick lesson that I would do with my students in terms of getting comfortable with the various levels of vamping. The first is that you want to know your movable chord positions, and especially for G, C, and D. And the basic vamp stroke might be just on the 2nd and 4th beats of a 4-beat measure like this. And we have to get used to pulsing the note so that it gets clipped. Many times with the right hand, you would mute the 5th string, bring the wrist down to give a drier sound on the banjo, and more often than not, you're going to be up here as well. Let's add a bass note, however, to this, which is what Earl did most of the time. We're going to let that bass note ring, so like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a little bit like rubbing the top of your head and rubbing your belly at the same time, because we're doing a lot of things. Make sure you let that bass note last, like a regularly fretted note, into the pinch, and in this case I'm playing 3, 2, 1, which we don't do all the time. Sometimes we can just play the top 2 strings, and then we let that die. Now, we can get a variety of different feelings and affects by how long we let that vamp last. On Carnegie Hall, the second cut that they play is the fiddle tune Durham's Reel, and it's very fast, and Earl's playing backup in the key of D, and he's vamping almost exclusively, and when he vamps, it's very wide. He does mute the pitch, but he lets it ring quite a bit. In other cases, you might want to choose to make it a more percussive effect on the second and fourth beats, and this is what I do most of the time. Now, I bet a lot of you already understand that technique. Let's now go to some of the more advanced things that happen with vamping. The next thing to get used to is going back and forth for a particular chord between what we call the F shape position and the D position 4 frets higher. So you hear how that already raises our game, gives us almost the feeling of what a guitar player would call an alternating bass note, because we're changing, in this case, the bass note from the G to the B, and then go back. Now, once you get used to this, you could start thinking about keeping certain fingers down to get a slide effect. With vamping techniques, slides, I hear, happen in two ways. One of them is just the result of moving the position, but keeping the finger fretted. And again, when I play these ideas, I try to keep my ring and my pinky finger fretted on the fourth and first strings, the outside rails there. That's very hard to do because when we shift to the D shape, the ring finger wants to move with the middle. But it can be done. And if you keep both of those fingers down, even if you don't do a slide deliberately, if you gain some speed, you'll hear the effect of a slide. Let's see if I can do this. Hear that? Now I can delay the move to the new chord and actually play a slide on the fourth string. That's a different sound. So that is another way to do the slide. Now, I know that you've heard Earl elaborate these vamping techniques by adding eighth notes, and we've got examples in both Gray Eagle and Fiddle and Banjo. If we go down to measure 18, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if I don't play any of the slides, or don't accentuate that, but just look at the right hand, we've got an elaborated vamping technique that is probably the maximum way that Earl would play this. But this works at most tempos too. It sounds like this: 3, 4. So that stroke right there are going to be a couple of eighth notes: fourth string, second string, fully fretted. Then we'll move in with our thumb on the third string and play a pinch that is just the third string and first string. That part of that measure sounds like this. You might want to practice that quite a bit. I've gotten used to muting the fifth string with my thumb so that it doesn't ring sympathetically. Most of the time I don't dampen myself, but J.D. Crowe and Sonny Osborne, certainly this was their go-to way of doing vamps, by muting the right hand. Earl surely did it too. That helps mute that fifth string. So if we get used to moving between the two shapes and add that elaborated eighth note pattern to the vamp, let's slide into it now. That would give us this. That last note is the fifth fret of the first string. You can see that in the tablature, and I've written it in parentheses. When we play this up to speed, oftentimes the note is just suggested, and the middle finger of the right hand is coming in as a rhythmic placeholder. Sonny Osborne called this like chicken picking kind of thing. And really, you can kind of view it as a placeholder, depending upon the feel that you want. Charlie Cushman talked about the feel that you want. Not every note is played clearly, and this would be an example of that. So again, looking at measure 18, sliding from 2 to 5, and then the ancillary slide, not deliberate, but we just hear the finger shift. Then back down. And then Earl was going to go to the A chord by playing octaves on the fourth and first string. And then check out the vamping pattern for the A chord. Again, that very, very common pattern. Don't forget to mute. The tablature isn't telling you which strings to mute. You're going to mute the pinch notes. A, in this case, D, and then a brush. And the fiddle takes the solo at that point. The bottom of the page, instead of the fiddle taking the solo when they do the C section the second time around, Earl plays harmonics. And harmonics are an element of many of Earl's tunes, like Bugle Call Rag, and basically we've got those at particular places on the banjo, the most prominently the 12th, 7th, and 5th fret. One secret to harmonics is get right over the fret. Don't put your finger in a fretting position and lightly touch it. And I'm not playing it very well there. That's a little bit better. Okay, there we go. And if you want it to really ring, you can get used to the idea of hitting it lightly right over the fret and then bringing it up. Sometimes we don't have time to do that, and we just have to roll across the strings, like for Bugle Call Rag. That idea. It's a little bit inefficient to use the ends of your fingers for vamping because you just don't have enough time to quickly get from one string to the other. So at any rate, those harmonics there are a really cool idea with Gray Eagle. All right, and then he goes up the neck, and I was indicating that is one of our options before going through the tune a second time. I know that we are really, really running short on time here. Let me go ahead and skip. Really? Okay. Okay, all right. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and play the full Fiddle and Banjo Stony Point, and then I'll jump and play My Home's Across the Blue Ridge Mountains, so you've got something to work on over the next couple weeks. We've only got one class session left. I'm sorry about this, but if there's anything that we haven't covered, please let me know and send me or send the Peghead Nation folks an email as quickly as you can, and I'll try my best to cover that in what is likely to be a very whirlwind class 2 weeks from now. Fiddle and Banjo is really a tune called Stony Point, and old-time musicians sometimes add a third section. Great recording of this that's contemporary with no banjo is Tony Rice and his album Manzanita with Sam Bush, Ricky Skaggs, and David Grisman. They play Stony Point as well. It's a beautiful tune. Earl plays beautifully on it. I decided just to tab out from beginning to end for you. I was curious to see what I would find, and it's interesting when I do this kind of micro work with these very small units that I end up discovering things that surprise me, even some of the simplest things. And so let me play this through, and I'll try to talk over it as we go for things that I want you to pay attention to. Once again, the fiddle starts, Earl comes in on the 4th beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Here's the form. Fiddle and Banjo with a cat chorus here down below. I know we only have just a couple minutes left, and let me go ahead and play for you Across the Blue Ridge Mountains. Listen to that melody, and Earl recorded it later with Joan Baez in the key of C. This version from Live at Vanderbilt, 1964, is in G. Earl is in G without a capo. This is another classic example of what Charlie Cushman was talking about with Earl squeezing the banjo. Listen to the tone. It's awesome. And I also ask you to listen to the interplay of the different instruments at each point in the song. We'll talk about that next week. Here's the solo. Great solo for beginners to work on. And I've written the lyrics underneath so you can see how Earl's playing relates to the melody. Here we go. Let me count us in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Folks, I want to thank Thomas Goldsmith again for joining us. And I don't know if we have any time for questions, Dan, but I know we're running late. We'll see you next week. We'll talk about these tunes a little bit more next time.
You want to take just one quick question here, Bill?
Sure, sure.
That's what we have. Bob asked, when you did the harmonics on the 5th fret, I think this is on Gray Eagle, was that over the D chord or the G chord?
Do 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 do. The answer is yes. It's actually over both chords, and what Earl played was great because he didn't shift positions. You know, if we were to play harmonics over the 7th fret, that would be over the D chord. But he went. And so by going to that 4th string there, he's able to infer the D chord without actually shifting position. You could go, let's see. That would be another way to do it, but this was a little simpler. So it goes da 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 ba 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 da da ba. So it's a harmonic sequence that works 1 5 1. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Having a great time. Only one class left. Get your questions to me.